I was reminded of the stories that I grew up hearing from my father, growing up in the country of then Rhodesia. But prior to them British coming to Zimbabwe, we were none other than the powerful Monomotapa Kingdom. And my father recalled to me, and all of us in the family, over and over again, how our land in Zimbabwe was taken by the British. If you were a veteran of the First World War, or just an adventurous Briton, First or Second World War, you were guaranteed 2,000 hectares of land in Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, plus any loot from the local people. I repeat, if you were a veteran of the First or Second World War, or just simply an adventurous Briton, you were guaranteed 2,000 hectares of land in Rhodesia, plus any loot from the local people. The British were encouraged to loot from the local people. They even have that law in the books today. It's called the British Loot Law. Those on the ground, the Rhodesians, the British who were on the ground, they had divided Zimbabwe, Rhodesia then into 4 regions. The first region was the perfect region for agriculture. It had the perfect rain, perfect soil. Region 2 was pretty close to Region 1. Region 3, not so good, perfect for cattle ranching. And Region 4, nobody should live there. It didn't rain, the soil was like sand, like a desert, and it was infested with tsetse flies and mosquitoes. So the British set out to move the Zimbabwean people from Region 1 and Region 2, even Region 3, into Region 4. So when you landed in Zimbabwe as a British, you were directed in the Region 1 or Region 2 area. And the way a British mapped out his land is by getting on a horse and riding in one direction until either him or his horse was tired. Then he would put his peg. And the following day he would wake up again and do the same thing. So it took the British man 4 days to map up his land. And when he was done, everything in that land was his, minus the people. They would then go to the villages within that newly acquired land, and they would tell the villagers that in this direction, go past this mountain. In this direction, go past this river, because your land is now mine. And the people left with whatever they could carry. My father was a young boy of about 13 years. You see, we don't quite know exactly what his birthday was, but we do know that he was born in the year of the leaves. And what that year of the leaves, it just so happened that there was a year that was very peculiar in the sense that so many leaves were shedded. And everybody remembers that year of the leaves. And during our history, the year of the leaves was 1919. So we assume he was around 13 years of age when this particular situation occurred in his village. As a young man, he remembers waking up early hours of the morning and there was pandemonium in the village. Everyone was running around the village, scattered around, and there were these men on horses, the men without knees, they called them. You see, when you wear pants, you look like you have no knees. So they called them the men without knees on horses. They were running around the village and torching the huts. The whole village was ablaze. And everybody was running away with whatever they could carry on their heads. His aunt was pregnant and was due any day. So they had to ask these men without knees for permission to allow her to stay until she could deliver. So they had negotiated that her heart was the only one that could not be set on fire. So they decided that maybe if we just left one young person, a child, just maybe that the British would not kill them. So it was my aunt, his aunt, who was pregnant, a grandmother who was the midwife, her husband, and another sister, and my father, who stayed behind in this village that had been torched up. And they were huddled in this one little hut. And my father recounts the biggest fear that he had every morning was the fear that this white man without knees on a horse would stop by every morning and wanted to know whether or not his aunt had delivered. Sadly for them, it took 3 weeks before she could deliver. And 3 days after she delivered, they were asked to walk. We didn't care where you go, just get away from now my land. And unfortunately for them, no sooner had they landed in what they thought would be their new home, before they could regroup, yet another British came out and mapped out his land. And once again, here they were. So they decided this time, they were just going to go as far away as they can, hoping that no other white men would come and claim their land as theirs. That is the story I grew up being told by my father. And he would always say, where our land originally was, it was now the land that was owned by Oppenheimer of Oppenheimer Funds. And when we would drive past that land, you could drive at 120 kilometers an hour, and you were still on his farm. His farm was larger than the country of Belgium. And my father would always say, someday we will get our land back from these thieves. I grew up truly believing that the British were thieves. Because as a little girl, that's what my father told me. And I believe him. And based on that story, you cannot deny that. So those who chose to say the way in which the land was taken in Zimbabwe, I would always say, let me tell you my story from my father. Let me tell you how the land was taken. And that is our truth, that we were denied. We were told lies. Then you fast forward over a century later. I often say, I'm the granddaughter of a grandfather who was dispossessed of his land. And then my white Caucasian friend is a granddaughter of the thief who stole the land from my grandfather. I'm simply asking that me, as the dispossessed granddaughter, who has lived an underprivileged life because of the actions of your grandfather, and you, who has lived a privileged life out of the loot from your grandfather, it's now 2019. You and I, we know what's right. Let's sit down and talk about this. Let's fix this the right way. But instead, my colleague then says, but I had nothing to do with it. This land is now mine. To which I will also say, but I also had nothing to do with it. I've lived an underprivileged life. What's right is right, and what is wrong is wrong. So the truth of the matter is, because you will not agree to fix this situation, do you want me to beat you up? Before you can do the right right thing? Or are you going to be civilized enough and do the right thing? Because if the truth be told, going back to my grandfather, we have been the civilized ones. And you and your grandfather have been the uncivilized ones. How long is it going to take before you can do the right thing? And the story did not go on just in Zimbabwe. The story is repeated around the globe. The injustices that was told to me by my father, the injustices that I grew up with in Rhodesia, those injustices continue around the globe. What is it about us black people that we're hated so much? What is it that we as black people have done to the world to deserve the disrespect that we uniformly experience no matter where you find us on the globe? We are the most exploited and abused race in the history of humanity.